Ark is packed with almost 200 unique creatures, and more are getting added to the game every year. Some are absolute must-tames, while others, well, not so much. In this video, I'll rank the 15 most useless tames inside of Ark. My criteria includes how replaceable a creature is by using something else, how strong or useful a creature is, and by asking the simple question, why would I ever tame this? I also won't include any creature you can tame with a fish basket because stuff like a trilobite, leech, or fish is just super useless and would make the list really boring. I'm taking into account both the PvE and PvP sides of the game for this video, and without further ado, let's get into it. At number 15, I have the Megaloceros. The Megaloceros is easily the best tame on this list, but that doesn't mean it's good. Its only utility stems from the male variant farming thatch, and its insanely high speeds when chain jumping. The main issue with this creature isn't even that it doesn't have much utility, the real problem is that it simply has so many weaknesses. First off, the Megaloceros doesn't produce any eggs, so it's not helpful for crafting any kibble recipe. The deer's stats, especially its HP, are absolutely awful. The female Megaloceros literally cannot attack because of it not having any horns, and the spawn locations for the Megaloceros are in annoying areas a lot of the time, like the redwoods and the snow. The reason these spawn locations are so bad is because it makes you go a little bit into your progression first before you can tame the Megaloceros, and it's really designed to be an early game mount. The mobility is really good, it's very fast, but it's just not helpful once you already have access to flyers to go to the Megaloceros spawn areas, or just significantly stronger creatures that are also high in speed like the dire bear. The thatch harvesting is also a decent perk. It can move really quick, so you do farm thatch quickly. The problem is the weight is pretty bad, so your value per trip is a lot lower, which averages it out. It's a shame because if you could get these on the beaches or somewhere in the really early game, the high speed would be a great choice for escaping danger. But as it's currently implemented into the game, the Megaloceros really isn't useful. At number 14, I have the Archaeopteryx. The Archaeopteryx is a great example of having one really known use case and basically doing nothing else. This use case is, of course, gliding through the tech cave. There's only one small issue with this use case. It's replaceable. You can use parachutes with a grapple, you can use a Maywing, you can use a glider suit, and I'd argue that all three of these options are substantially better than the Archaeopteryx at this job. Besides this use case, this thing sucks. It does also produce eggs for simple kibble, but there's tons of other easier to tame alternatives for this task. It just operates as a parachute, but the huge issue is that you need to carry it in two hands, so it's basically never worth using. I've seen people argue that you can use it for unlimited flight when your flyer runs out of stamina, dismount, hover on the Archaeopteryx, and then get back on the flyer, but you can just do this with a parachute, or even better, just use a Cinemacrops for this. Just bring a couple of parachutes around with you at all times. It doesn't take up both of your hands, you can carry multiple with you for a low cost of weight, and you can pair parachutes with grapples to get out of basically any sticky situation. You can also redirect yourself much easier with this combo than if you were using an Archaeopteryx by itself, and parachutes plus grapples are a far easier thing to get than an Archaeopteryx. The reason the Archaeopteryx is so annoying to tame is because it's small, fast, and spawns in the obnoxious redwood biome. With all of these things added together, the Archaeopteryx easily makes this list. At number 13, I have the Plesiosaur. The Plesiosaur sucks. It has functionality in terms of high speed, okay stats, and a platform saddle, but none of these qualities make it useful. Its speed is comparable with the newly released Zivactinus, and the Megashalon and Moza are both way better options for a mobile underwater base. The Plesiosaur's stats also simply don't hold up against the strongest underwater options like the Mozas and Tuzos. It's also not extremely easy to tame early in progression because of its deep ocean spawns and the level 64 saddle requirement, so its intended purpose of being a stepping stone to the late game underwater content is just not met. The question the Plesiosaur fails to answer is just, why would you ever tame it? It has no feature about it that stands out, doesn't help in creating any kibbles, and it's just a bit below average across the board. It's definitely not bad, which is why it's towards the bottom of this list, but it's far from being good. Also, side note, this isn't relevant to the list, but why does this thing not have a TLC for the appearance? It is really outdated. Over the next month, my Discord is hosting giveaways for whatever Ark content the winner wants. Ark Ascended, Ark Evolved, or any DLC is fair game on any platform. If you're interested in trying to win, check out the first link in the description by clicking it and then join on the server. While you're down there, I'd appreciate you subbing and liking the video to help the channel out. Without further ado, let's get back to the list. At number 12, I have the Terrorbird. The Terrorbird is honestly a pretty solid creature, but I just don't see a point in ever getting one. It's pretty fast, decently strong, and has a hovering glide ability that's pretty cool. It also produces eggs for the regular kibble recipe, which doesn't hurt. The issue is just that the Terrorbird is overshadowed by so many others. It doesn't get as good of a pack buff like the Direwolf, it's far worse than the Thylacoleo as a singular mount, and it's less accessible than the Raptor because it doesn't spawn in early game areas, it only spawns in the redwoods and other annoying spots. I just never see a reason to tame these. The regular kibble eggs can be produced by more useful creatures like the baryonyx, stegos, dinosuchus, or others. There's better alternatives for every stage in progression, and while the terror bird isn't bad, it's just not good. On the bright side, the recent mini TLC they gave to this makes the movement look hilarious. At number 11, I have the Gallimimus. I may get hate for putting the Galley on this list, but the thing just sucks. Yes, it's the fastest land mount in the game. Yes, it can carry you around in the platform cart that was added in ASA. Yes, you can use the Gallimimus eggs for simple kibble. And yes, Syntac uses it and loves it. But here's the issue I have. The stats are insurmountably bad. Even with all the positive traits I mentioned, it's simply too weak to be usable. Its HP pool, similar to the Megalosaurus, is just awful, and this time it's even worse. The Galley can easily die in a few seconds if you're not paying attention, or even if you leave it somewhere for a few seconds. Taming it is really annoying because without a net gun, it's way too fast to be tameable super easily, and they spawn primarily in the redwoods, which is super annoying because they're so weak. And there's way better choices for the platform cart, like the Dire Bear. The Dire Bear gets to the same speeds after you let it charge up, and it's way stronger and has more utility, so I just don't see a reason to ever use the Galley. Like most of the creatures on the list so far, which isn't the case for everything on this list, the Gallimimus isn't actually a bad creature. Its issue is just that there's no reason to tame one because there's plenty of better alternatives. At number 10, I have the Liopleurodon. The Liopleurodon is awful. I debated putting it on the list at all just because it's a temporary tame, but decided to keep it in. The purpose of this evasive pain in the ass is to increase the quality of loot drops in a near vicinity to it. Unfortunately for the Liopleurodon, it not only suffers from the ability not being very good at all, but it also is one of the most obnoxious tames to obtain in the game. The spawn caps for these are very low, so it makes it pretty rare. They spawn only in the deep ocean, and if you hit them at all, they disappear instantly into a whirlpool. You have to passively tame it with honey while making sure no aggressive underwater threats are nearby to attack it, and this process is one of the most finicky things Ark has to offer. If it was a permanent tame, the increased drop quality from the underwater drops would make the Liopleurodon somewhat decent and definitely off this list, but it isn't anywhere near good enough to be worth the effort in its current state. The juice just isn't worth the squeeze with this thing, insanely high effort for a low and short-lived reward. At number 9, I have the Troodon. Talk about high effort and low reward tames. The Troodon is a pain in the ass to tame, and is a pain in the ass to use effectively when tamed. The first issue is that you need to sacrifice your tames for it, which is janky and ends up never being worth the tame you give up. If you do manage to tame one of these things, good luck finding a good use case for them. They lay eggs for regular kibble, but are easily the hardest creature to tame out of the entire list you see on screen. You also can't ride Troodons, so even though they inflict a ridiculous amount of torpor, it's hard to get value out of them. They're also just utterly useless in the PvE side of the game because their entire functionality is this torpor. The problem with them in PvP is that they have weak stats, and they don't have saddles because, yet again, you can't ride them, so they don't get that extra armor and die really easily in PvP. The best use case for the Troodon is easily sending a pack of them at somebody during a cave defense in hopes of caging them, but even this is inconsistent because of how many ways a decent PvP player can avoid getting caged. They can simply eat polymer before going unconscious, they can get on a tame to crush the Troodons, they can use a strong weapon to melt through the Troodons, or they can simply have a tribe mate grapple them out after they get knocked out. All of these are really easy counters, and there's a ton of other ways you can deal with them as well. Due to them not being useful in any practical application and being pretty underwhelming in the one thing they're supposed to be good at, on top of the fact that they're super annoying to tame, the Troodon is easily top 10 on this list. At number 8, I have the Diplodocus. The bust takes 8th place on my list, and I'm a certified Diplodocus hater, so before I go and rip on it, I'll go over the pros you guys brought up in my giant creature tier list. The saddle has a ton of seats, it's a pretty fast creature, it can collect berries with a good weight stat, it gets ignored by a lot of small aggressive creatures in the wild, and it can produce eggs for regular kibble. With all those pros, placing it in 8th might seem a little ludicrous, but in my opinion, it's just not worth taming. My issue with this giant sauropod is that it can't answer the simple question of when would I ever need this? The Diplo saddle cost is way too high for it to be viable in the early game. The Bronto completely wrecks the Diplo in the late game berry farming because of the much larger AoE and ability to deal damage to enemy creatures, and the Paracer and Quetzal are both far better options for base transportation and giant resource transportation because of their platform saddles and much stronger fighting or flying capabilities. The ability to passively tame or knockout tame the Diplo is cool, but it's just really never a great choice in my opinion. If it could do damage, it wouldn't be on the list. At number 7, I have the Compy. The Compy is 7th, and this was the hardest creature on the list to rank for me. On one hand, it's a shoulder mount, it's really easy to tame in the early game, and it has an extremely small hitbox while providing eggs that help with simple kibble. This makes it a very space efficient option to farm this tier of eggs, and the shoulder mount perks are always nice to have. With that being said, the compy is just so incredibly weak. It does get a decent pack bonus, but when on Earth would you run around with a pack of compies unless you literally just spawned? The reason I put it here is that its strength in numbers is mitigated when being used as a shoulder mount, and because I think it's the worst shoulder mount in the game due to its lack of utility. I could honestly see both sides of the argument. I could see it not being on the list at all because it's a shoulder mount and it's very space efficient for egg generation, and I could also easily see it in the top 5 because its stats are just so pathetic. At number 6 I have the Manta. The Manta is the most useless underwater creature in Ark. Before the Sifactinus was released, the purpose for taming a Manta was because it was ridiculously fast and that jumping in and out of the water was unique and felt awesome. In terms of practical use cases, the Ichthyi has always been better because it's far easier to tame and serves the same purpose. Both are weak early game underwater creatures, both are fast, but only one is easy to tame, especially off spawn. The entire idea of passive taming an aggressive underwater creature is already obnoxious enough, but the fact that you need to do it in the early game for a slightly better Ichthyosaurus makes the task even dumber and just completely pointless. It also doesn't offer any eggs for kibble crafting, so once you're out of the early game, Mantas are just a complete joke. Before I get into my top 5, here's some honorable or dishonorable mentions depending on how you look at it. My first honorable mention is the Dilophosaur. The Dillo is really bad, but I decided it at least served the purpose of being a decent early game protection tame. It also has the functionality of laying basic kibble eggs, which is better than nothing. The other honorable mention I wanted to include was the Microraptor. It was really tempting to put this on the list also, but Kichko used it so well back in the day that I'll never put it on a list like this. It also lays eggs for simple kibble, but it's so annoying to tame that I do not care at all. The main reason it's not on the list in all seriousness is that it has the shoulder mount perks and is definitely better than a compy, so I decided to put it a step below the top 15. If you think I missed a creature for this list and I should have mentioned it in the honorable mentions or even in my top 15, make sure to comment the creature down below and your reason for why you think I should have included it. I like to respond to comments on this channel a lot. I think interacting is fun, and I think I'm pretty good at responding to comments, so if you do comment about it, I will probably respond at some point. At number 5, I have the Lamatria. Building off the Manta from number 6, this is just another really worthless early game mobility mount. It's worse than every other early game alternative on Scorched Earth, which is the only map you'd ever consider taming one of these on due to the lack of pteranodons. And it has horrible stats to boot. It has really bad weight, which means it can't carry anything. Its only means of protecting itself is a poisonous gas that it releases. It doesn't produce eggs for any kibble, and it's just a really bad creature. If you're on Scorched Earth, do yourself a favor and just tame a Procoptodon. Skip the entire Lamatria stage, the thing is not worth your time or effort, and the Procoptodon is faster, stronger, can farm tons of resources, it spawns in all the easy Scorched Earth areas anyway, and it's way more fun to use. Outside of Scorched Earth, there's zero justification for ever wanting one of these because of the availability of other early game flyer options like the Pteranodon or even the Pelagornis. At number 4, I have the Patchy. If you haven't noticed, I've mentioned kibble crafting applications for every creature on this list so far. The reason I did that is to differentiate between the 4 most useless tames in the game. The Patchy as a mount and a tame is utterly useless. It's insanely slow, doesn't do good damage, is not a super common spawn, and doesn't spawn in early game areas. It also has no unique farming or combat abilities that make it worth taming at all. In short, the Patchy is as bad as it gets as a tame. The only sliver of redeeming quality is that it gets a saddle for natural armor, and that it's a pretty space efficient option for producing eggs for simple kibble. I also like its design more than the top 3 creatures, which doesn't matter at all for this ranking, but these top 4 creatures are so useless that I'm running out of things to talk about. At number 3, I have the Pulmonoscorpius. The top 3 on this list are absolutely terrible tames. The Scorpion can at least defend itself slightly, but the usefulness runs out right there. The taming process is very straightforward, which does give it a boost compared to the top 2, but even with how easy the tame is, it still isn't worth your time. This thing doesn't give a useful egg for any kibble recipe, it's slow, it has bad stats, and simply put, it doesn't have a use case in Ark. The Scorpion does inflict torpor, but it doesn't inflict enough for it to be meaningful or dangerous at all, and it does get a saddle which gives it a little bit of armor even though this thing's design is not meant for battle at all. It's just a weak, non-farming creature, simply the definition of useless. At number 2, I have the Aranio. The Aranio is just a spider version of the Scorpion. The reason I put the Aranio above the Scorpion is because it's more obnoxious to tame. Everything else is the exact same. I've seen a comment or two saying that you can use these by sending a bunch of them out during a cave defense to knock somebody out. As somebody who's played a ton of cave PvP, I can confidently say that if this strategy ever actually worked and got somebody caged, that person would either get kicked from the tribe permanently, or they would get nicknamed Spider-Man and would be made fun of for the next decade. The best defense this thing provides for PvP is the distraction that the raiding tribe experiences from laughing so hard at it. The Aranio, like the Scorpion, also doesn't produce any egg that's useful for kibble crafting, no utility, embarrassingly weak, and annoying to tame. Literally a textbook definition of useless. It's honestly a miracle this thing isn't first. In first place, I have the Onyx. If you tame an Onyx and you aren't going for the Master Zoologist achievement, you are far more patient than I am. I've always thought this tame was just kinda terrible. I think the Dimorphodon is pretty good and the Onyx is just a far worse version than it. The only decent attribute for the Onyx that it has over anything else is the better armor piercing, but they're just so much slower. They're a bigger target. They don't produce any egg that's helpful for kibble. And the armor piercing is nice, but if somebody has a flamethrower, a pump shotgun, or any other decent close range weapon, these are doing absolutely nothing. The other thing with these is you can't really whistle them at anybody. They're just kinda too slow for that. So the only way these things get PvP value is if they jump somebody from the roof of a base, but if they're jumping somebody, the person's already in your base and you're probably already screwed. The Dimorphodon has a smaller hitbox, it moves faster, it can be placed on your shoulder unlike the Onyx, and the Dimorph is so much easier to tame. The Onyx is one of the most annoying creatures to tame in the game in my opinion. Half the caves you go in, you can't even tame them, and the other half you have to do a really obnoxious passive tame which is just super finicky. This is one of the very few creatures that I've never tamed in Ark. I know some people think the Onyx is decorative. If you do think it's decorative and you like it for that reason, it's probably like third on this list because at least that's something. But for me, it just doesn't do anything. It's a really annoying tame and there's no reason to put the effort in. It's definitely in debate with the Aranio and the Pulmonus Scorpius because they're all just totally useless. But I think the Onyx just barely takes the cake. One more thing that makes these three creatures even worse, by the way, is none of them can breed. That's another reason the Apache was 4th instead of the top 3. If they were able to breed, you could at least use them for making a chitin farm or something, but there's literally just no reason to tame these three. They're all so bad that the tiebreaker was literally just which one is the most annoying to tame. Well, that's my list. Thank you to all my members who help in making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, click the video linked on screen now to check out 20 minutes of completely useless Ark information. See you there. Peace!